"Oh my God, Evan, let's get married on April 3rd. "What? Are you serious?" "Yeah, look." Then she waved her phone in my face. On the screen was some article about choosing special dates to get married. "It's 04/03/21. We could get married anyways, right? So why not choose a unique date? And you'll never forget our wedding anniversary." But babe, that's 3 days away. How are we going to arrange a wedding in such a short time?" She jumped to her feet. "We will marry on this special date." Then she ran off upstairs. She was kidding, right? As this idea was insane. Oh, by the way, that was Mila, my girlfriend. And I'm Evan, and we've been dating for over a year now. I didn't give any more thought to her mad idea, but then later I saw her making all these calls to wedding locations and everything. And that's when I realized she wasn't kidding. Unsurprisingly, all the local wedding venues were fully booked for that date. So Mila came up with a crazy plan. We would drive to the wedding capital of the world, Vegas. My God, this was lunacy. But Mila wouldn't take no for an answer, so it was settled. We were going to Vegas, baby. There's one problem. We live in Alaska, so the trip would take us about 2 days and 16 hours. We called into work to take a few days off, and then we woke up super early and began our long journey to Vegas. I have to admit that I was kind of excited about our adventure, but little did we know how many ridiculous situations we would come across on our way. We started the journey at 5:30, and only a few hours in, Mila got peckish, so she started munching on our snack supply. Later on, I was craving potato chips too, so I asked her to feed me some. But to my horror, none of the snacks were left, and we hadn't even crossed city limits yet. That's not humanly possible. Then, when we reached the highway, she suddenly said she needed a pee. I stopped at the nearest service station, but she didn't go to the restroom. Instead, she turned to me and said, "Actually, since we're here now, why don't we go grab some lunch?" Excuse me? But it was 10 a.m. And didn't she just eat all our snacks? I knew it was pointless arguing with a hungry girl, so I just followed her. After that, we hit the road again. I was getting a bit bored, so I reached for my phone to turn on some Post Malone, but Mila stopped me and said that she had something far more interesting. The audio novel To All the Boys I've Ever Loved Before. Jesus. It was so boring that it almost sent me to sleep. So for the safety of our lives and the lives of other drivers, I decided to stop at a motel to get some sleep. Besides, I couldn't endure hearing any more of Laura Jean and this guy Peter. The next day after breakfast at a diner, we were walking to our car when Mila suddenly saw a pregnant woman loading stuff into her trunk. She immediately ran over to the lady, then told me to do the heavy loading while she just stood there and chatted to her. Suddenly, the lady touched her stomach and said that she wasn't feeling well. Oh my God, don't tell me that she was gonna... Oh boy, her water broke! Quick, we need to get her in your car and take her to the hospital! My car? What if the baby comes out? But Mila didn't listen and was already helping the lady get into the back seat. My God, I hope the baby didn't slip out too soon or else I'd have to burn my car. Let me drive. You sit in the back with her. Her husband isn't here, so she needs a man for emotional support. What? That sounded absurd, but there was no time to argue. The lady began to scream because of the pain. I tried to calm her down by telling her to breathe in and out, but she just shouted, "Shut up!" Then held my hand and squeezed it really hard. Oh my God, she was going to break my fingers like toothpicks. It hurt so much I began to scream with her. Thank God we got the lady to the hospital on time. Phew, I couldn't imagine what would happen to my hand and my car if the baby had arrived any sooner. So the journey continued. As we were driving through Fort Nelson, I saw a guy holding a sign asking for a ride to the nearest service station. Of course, I ignored the dude and wanted to drive past him, but my girl Mila over here just couldn't seem to brush that aside. She made me stop the car and warmly welcomed him into our car. Ugh, that was so annoying. While I was driving, I smelled something really awful. My God, it was so smelly that I couldn't breathe. It had to be this dude. I gave Mila an angry glare, but she just gave me a guilty smile back. Well, at least she had to suffer too. I had no choice but to open the windows on a highway. Mila clutched her head as she shouted, "Are you crazy? Close the windows! The wind is ruining my hair!" Oh my God, was her hair more important than her nose? Thank God, after 30 minutes we reached a service station and the guy got out of my car. I went to the restroom to freshen myself up, and when I came back, Mila was nowhere to be found. I was about to call her, but oh man, I left my phone in the car and she had the keys. After 45 minutes of searching, I gave up and went back to the car to find her sitting there, her arms folded as she glared at me. Where have you been? You do realize we have a tight schedule to keep." What? Was she serious? Then I suddenly heard someone coughing in the back. I turned around and to my horror saw a little boy sitting there. Why was there a kid in my car? Mila explained that his school bus had left without him and we needed to take him to his camping location. Not again, Mila. Why does she have to be that sweet little angel who couldn't help but have to help everybody? But my God, now there was not the time to be Charlie's Angels and rescue that little kid. I told her, and she immediately accused me of being heartless, cruel, and everything. Jesus. That's the third person I'd given a free ride to today. As I was driving to the camping location, the kid suddenly felt nauseous. I shouted at him to hold it as we were on the highway, and it was impossible to stop. But he started to make vomit sounds. Mila freaked out, so she grabbed something and let the kid throw up in there. After I found a place to stop, I turned around and saw that Mila threw all my stuff out and used my precious Nike duffel bag as a vomit bag. That's it. I'd had enough. So I shouted at the kid, "Get out of my car!" He got so scared that he ran out and started crying really loudly. That wasn't cool. He's just a scared little kid. How would you like it if your school bus left you behind? Okay, maybe I was a bit harsh on the kid. You can't blame me. It'd been a long couple of days, and that was my favorite bag. But still, I went outside to comfort the kid. Hey, please don't cry. I'm really sorry for earlier. I didn't mean to shout at you. I'm just really tired from all that driving. The kid stopped crying, but still looked very scared of me. So I said, "Hey, if you give me a smile, I promise to buy you some candy later." He immediately smiled and hugged me. Oh great, I was sure Mila didn't wipe his mouth clean after all that throwing up, as I got some vomit stains on my shirt. But hey, the hug kind of felt nice. We dropped the kid off and his teachers were very grateful. But because of everything we'd been through today, there was no way we could rest in a motel and make it on time to Vegas. So the only option was to drive through the night, so Mila took the wheel so I could catch some Z's. A honking sound startled me and I sat up and saw that we were going at a snail's pace. Mila, what's wrong? You're driving slower than my granny. I think we're lost. What? Why didn't she wake me up? Then, oh no, we suddenly heard a cop siren. And guess why we were pulled over? Yup, for driving too slowly in a 60-mile-an-hour zone. My God, I was freaking out. But Mila turned to me and said, "Just keep quiet and I'll do the talking." She opened the window and began to speak in a weird way. "Hi, officer, did I do something wrong?" "Can I see your license, please?" "Oh, yeah, absolutely. Here you go, Officer Good-Looking." "It's Goodlin." "Oh, sorry, my mistake. Please don't look at my picture. I was having a bad hair day when I took it." Oh, dear God, was she actually flirting with the cop? He looked at her license with a frown on his face. Oh, no, we'd end up being locked up. "Well, Miss Forrester, I think you look great in this picture. I'll let you off with a warning this time, but please be more careful. Driving at 20 in a 60-mile-an-hour zone is more dangerous than it sounds." Oh my God, thank you so much. Today must be my lucky day. I'm stopped by not only a very handsome but also kind-hearted officer. If I don't get married tomorrow, I will definitely get your number. My God, I think he gets it. After that, I didn't talk to her the whole night. How could she flirt with another man right in front of me? And now we had less than 16 hours to get to Vegas and get married. So we grabbed a quick breakfast from a diner, then carried on driving. On the plus side, we finally crossed the Canadian border. We were in Montana, baby. Then Mila turned to me and grumbled out, "FYI, you forgot to close the window again." Anything could have crawled inside while we were at that diner. Ugh, was she serious? I didn't have the time nor the patience for this, so I just nodded to let it go. We sat in silence, but suddenly I heard squeaking. No way was that Mila. Oh my God, something must be in my car. I pulled over and looked in the back seat to see a skunk jumped out right at me. We both screamed and got out of the car. While I was trying to think of a way to get rid of it, Mila suddenly pointed. Do you realize the car is rolling down that hill?" I turned around and the car was really moving. I must have forgotten to pull the handbrake. We chased after it, but luckily it rolled into a muddy patch. I looked inside and phew, at least the skunk had gone. I tried driving away, but the car made an awful sound and only seemed to sink lower into the mud. So I went outside to push the car, and Mila switched to the driver's seat, but then mud splashed everywhere. And when I say everywhere, I mean everywhere. I called out for her to stop, but guess what? She didn't hear me over the music, she just had to play. unbelievable. While here I was covered in dirt. But, well, as annoying as the loud music was, the weekend's blinding lights kind of boosted me up somehow, which made me push the car as hard as I could. And yes, it got out of the mud. I was tired, dirty, hungry, and I just wanted to get to Vegas in one piece. Was that too much to ask? I think God heard my prayers, because we made it to Las Vegas, baby. And it was 11:30 p.m. I had about 10 minutes to shower and change, but Mila insisted that we go straight into the chapel. My God, Mila. I looked like I'd been wrestling John Cena in a mud bath. We ran towards the reception, and when I looked at my watch, it was 11:45 p.m. Oh my God, I couldn't believe we made it. The past 3 days felt like 3 freaking months. Hi, it's 040321, and we're here to get married. The reception frowned at us, then said, Sorry, sweetie, but it's the 4th. Then she pointed at the calendar on her desk. Huh? Had we jumped time or something? Then I had a light bulb moment. Nevada is 1 hour ahead of Alaska. My God, we totally forgot about that. It was already April 4th. Mila looked devastated, and I was feeling a bit down about it too. But if I really had been a groom with this muddy look, I never would have dared look at the wedding pictures ever. Moreover, after everything we've been through on this trip, I think it's best we get to know each other a bit more before we get married. I'm already happy with what we're having right now, so no need to rush, right?
I entered the apartment to see 4 sets of eyes gawping at me. Hang on, I know Ned and Philip from my math class, and the girl currently giving me a snooty look while twirling her hair around her finger was Jessica. Well, I didn't actually know her, but her wealthy and snobbish reputation preceded her. Then lastly was that emo kid. What was his name again? Deciding to break the uncomfortable silence, I said, Oh, hey, so guess you guys are also in detention? No one replied, though they surely heard me. Whoa, okay. This atmosphere was tense, and I thought I'd always been the awkward one. Honestly, I don't even know why I'm being made to do this weird detention. All I did was accidentally and poorly throw the dodgeball in the gym teacher's face. Then, when I was about to apologize, my tongue slipped. But, aren't you supposed to be the toughest since you're the gym teacher? I mumbled. Naturally, she was livid, so I ended up in the principal's office, and he handed me a piece of paper with an apartment address on it and said, Go here for your detention. You'll stay here until you've learned your lesson. Huh? What type of unspecific instructions were those? Before I could ask him any more, he shooed me out of his office. Now, here I am in this random apartment with these untalkative kids. As I looked at them, I couldn't help but wonder what they'd done to end up here, especially when Ned was an excellent student. Did he make the wrong move in the chess club or something? We continued the whole staring at each other in silence routine. But then the door burst open and stormed in Gwen, our school's resident carefree tomboy. She sneered out, Good evening, babies. Great. Now I was stuck sharing a living space with a girl renowned for playing pranks such as toilet papering the principal's car and filling the biology lab with live frogs. But seriously, how were we at her truancy level? Let's see who we have here. Gwen rubbed her hands as she walked around and stared at us. Princess Jessica? Oof, how come? She raised an eyebrow and grinned sarcastically. Just sit down and shut up. Gwen gave him a dirty look. This isn't basketball. You're not the captain here, jock. Then she squared up to him. Ned turned pale. Jessica rolled her eyes, and the emo boy, well, he was busy sketching something and clearly chose to ignore our existence. We'd only been here for less than an hour, and the last thing we needed was a fist fight, so I stepped in between them. Pulling a wry face, Gwen said, What's this? Little Miss Friendly? Look, we're all stuck here and we don't know for how long, so let's at least try to be civil. Let's try talking it out. So, I'm Ashley and I'm here because of a misunderstanding with a gym teacher and a dodgeball. Geez, nobody cares. I can't believe I have to be here with these people. Jessica stood up and left. Pff, I'm with Miss Popular on this one. Ned sneered before he also left. And the emo boy too. Then Gwen rasped and disappeared. There was only Philip and me left in the room. He was meant to be handsome and stuff. But looking at him now, I didn't think so. Ugh, this awkward silence was insufferable. This was just like that movie, The Breakfast Club, but much worse, and in much longer time. Who on earth had to pack clothes for detention? I had no idea how long I had to stay here for. So I decided to go to bed. I walked into the girls' room to see that both of the beds next to the window were already occupied. Bummer. They'd taken the best spots. I reluctantly got into the only bed left and hoped that tomorrow wouldn't suck as much as today had. The next morning, I woke up to yelling. Huh? I rubbed my eyes and yawned. It was still far too early. I went out into the corridor to see what was going on and saw Jessica and Ned arguing over the apartment's only bathroom. Jessica wanted to apply her makeup while Ned really needed to go. Then Philip watched on and butted in on occasion to say something dumb. Why don't you use some of your nerdy mathematics to solve your problem? The only reason you need to spend so long applying makeup is because you're ugly. Ooh, burn! Philip laughed. Suddenly, the bathroom door slammed shut. They rushed over to it and tried opening it to no avail. 10 minutes later, the emo kid stepped out. Jessica screamed at him. How dare you! My personal stuff is still in there. I watched on, wide-eyed. OMG! These people were ridiculous! How was I meant to live with them? In the end, we eventually came to an agreement about the bathroom's rule. It was first come, first serve, but each of us could only have the throne for a max 15 minutes. Being in such a small space with people I barely knew was always going to be problematic, but not having our phones as a distraction made it so much harder. We had one TV, but there's only one lousy channel on it. No one cleaned up, no one seemed to get along. Ugh, seriously? When will this end? All of the constant dirt and arguing was driving me nuts. But then the final straw was this one time when I was washing my face, the cleansing foam accidentally got into my eyes to wipe it out. But to my horror, when I opened my eyes, so I quickly reached for a towel, I saw myself holding someone's sock instead. Yuck! After that, I gathered everyone and threw the sock onto the floor and said, "We need to sort out order, as I can't live like this anymore. It's gross." Jessica snorted. "Who are you to boss around? No one cares what you think." Before I even had a chance to say anything back, Ned piped in that Jessica was just a dumb rich girl who never lifted a finger. Then Gwen jumped up to her feet and started shouting for no reason. Philip gave me this smirky know-it-all look that made me want to scream. Then he actually lobbed a basketball at me, which almost took my head off. Then, ignoring the others, I started shouting at him. The only one who stayed quiet was the emo boy. "You aren't even that pretty. In fact, I've seen more attractive slugs," I heard Ned say to Jessica. That was a bit much, wasn't it? I mean, it was obvious Ned only teases Jessica because he has a huge crush on her. Jessica huffed as she tossed her hair behind her back, then stormed off to her room. Man, this place sucks. At least lunchtime had arrived, so I made myself a delicious-looking burger, then quickly went to the bathroom. When I returned, I couldn't believe it. Philip was taking a bite out of my burger. I screamed at him, but then he shrugged, then said he'd make me a new one. And like a decade later, my replacement lunch finally arrived, and Philip was smiling at me strangely and watched on as I bit into it. Ew! I lifted up the top of the bun to see a raw piece of beetroot. Ugh. I was so fed up with everyone that I went to bed super early that night. Only when I woke up the next day, both Jessica and Gwen burst out laughing at me. I hurried to the bathroom and checked out my face. Oh no. Turns out someone had drawn on my pillow, and now I had ink all over my face. I had to scrub my face for ages to get it off. Then Philip wouldn't quit laughing at me. I knew he was responsible. Ugh! Such a jerk! And on the other hand, we also had the emo kid that I was seriously getting sick of. He never said or did anything. Instead, he just sat there, usually wearing his stompy boots and looking all moody. I mean, why wear those sweaty-looking boots when he's stuck inside? It was about time he spoke up, so I came up with a prank to get him talking. When the emo kid was in the shower, Ned and I filled his beloved boots with mayo. A little later, I heard some loud thump. Then the emo kid did a weird walk across the room with his foot covered in mayo, while clutching one of his boots. "Have you lost your mind?" he shouted. And not gonna lie, I was intimidated by this other side of him. Then out of nowhere, Jessica appeared. She turned to me and shoved my shoulder. "That was too much, don't you think?" "Oh, no, you didn't. I wasn't gonna let someone like her speak to me like that and get away with it." So I struck a defensive pose and glared at her. We ended up in a stare-off when suddenly I felt arms pulling me back. It was Philip. I tried flailing free of his grip, which caused him to lose his balance, and he accidentally elbowed Gwen. "Oh, you're done, Jock!" Soon, Jessica and I were pulling each other's hair, and Gwen and Philip were shoving each other. It was mayhem. "Stop! All of you!" It was the emo kid. He glared at us with rage. "You're acting like immature brats!" Well, that was unexpected, but I guess it worked, as a few seconds later, we started cleaning up the mess we'd made. We knew something needed to change, so at dinner, we all sat around the table and tried to sort things out. The others were all staring down at their food and not talking, so I decided to go first. So, I'm here because I don't always react well to certain situations. I don't know, I guess I find it hard to make friends. I trailed off. Then Ned spoke up. "The only word my mom seems to know nowadays is study, study, study. I feel like all I am to her is a grade. So when I got a B in English Lit, I ripped it up in front of the teacher. That's the story." Jessica flicked back her hair, then said, "Try having all the money you could ever want, but the most neglectful parents ever. I bet they still haven't noticed that I've been stuck here with you losers for days now, just because I told some girl her skirt was hideous. I was doing her a favor. Poof." Then Philip blurted out, "My father wanted me to be strong and manly just like him. I don't want to be like him, but I'm worried I will be, and that I won't be able to do anything about it. So I skipped basketball practice, got into an argument with coach and my dad, and now I'm in the weirdest detention ever." Gwen sneered. "Least your dad's around. Mine does month-long disappearing acts. And my mom's dead. Oh, and I'm here because I put paint in some clown's locker. Serves them right for bad-mouthing me." Her words were followed by an intense silence. Awkward. But I felt like I understood everyone a little better now. Oh, but hang on. The emo kid hadn't said anything. "Hey, you." I looked at him. "So, what's your story?" He shrugged, and I didn't think he was going to talk, but then in a quiet voice he said, "I'm Stan. I never knew my dad. My mom isn't around, so I live with my grandparents. I'm here because I ignored the principal, but only because I had earphones in." "Oh," I muttered out. "Look, I'm sorry about your boots. I'll help you clean them if you like." Stan nodded. Jessica was right. I had been a bit harsh on him. Then Ned gave this awkward smile and said, Jessica, I know I've been a jerk to you, but it's only because I like you." Jessica didn't do so much as flinch. She still kept studying her nails. Probably because having boys smitten over her was already a part of her daily routine. "Well, I might like someone too." Phil stretched his arms behind his chair. I guess I like winding her up. He looked directly at me. I felt myself blushing, and I had this weird fluttering feeling in my stomach. But why? My heart started racing. Now what was I meant to do? It's me again, Ashley. And yep, you guessed it. I was still stuck in this apartment with these annoying kids. That was definitely the weirdest detention ever. None of us had any idea how long we'd be stuck here. Oh well, at least we weren't starving, as every 3 days a giant bag full of groceries would appear inside the doorway, since we couldn't get out of there. Things had become a little less awkward since the day we'd sat down and opened up to each other. Although Ned had switched from being a jerk towards Jessica to following her around the place like a lovesick puppy. Take this morning, for instance. He held a slice of toast out to her, which he'd cut into the shape of a heart. She rolled her eyes as she pushed the plate away. Poof! Get real, nerd! I don't like you. He took a bite of the toast, then in between chewing said, You'll soon change your mind. I'm Sin 2X and you're Coast 2X. So together, we're one. I had to admit, watching Ned try and fail to win Jessica's heart was amusing. But unfortunately, I had my own guy-shaped issue to deal with. Philip. He wasn't winding me up anymore. Instead, he was being nice to me. He even lent me his hoodie after I spilled jam on mine. This nice version of him would take some getting used to. Now we just needed Gwen and Stan to become a couple, and things would be even more interesting. But they barely look at each other. Lucky them, as Philip was really starting to bug me. Can you believe that he actually sprayed my favorite t-shirt with his aftershave? It stank and made me sneeze. Achoo! So I stormed into the living room where he was telling some lame joke to Ned, chucked my t-shirt at him, then yelled, Stop being weird. It's too much. He just gave me this soppy grin and replied, It's so I'm always on your mind. Ugh. I wasn't in the mood for this, so I returned to my room and sulked there for the rest of the day. Ugh, this apartment was too crazy. I just wanted to go home. My stomach started to rumble, so I reluctantly left the room to grab a snack. What? Jessica was spoon-feeding Philip cereal. Ned was sulking in the corner of the room, and Gwen was mimicking Jessica's actions with Stan, who now had mushed up cereal all over his face. Jeez, Philip thought he was so handsome that he could get any girl he wanted. Well, he sure moved on fast. Fine, I'd show him. I squeezed in between Gwen and Stan and touched his hair. Your hair, Stan. I've never known it is so glossy. I put my hand on my chin and looked at him with adoring eyes, and in my cutest voice I asked him, Would you like me to make you some French toast? Stan gave me this petrified look and tried squirming away from me. Then Philip and Jessica walked over, and he frowned at me. Come on, Ash. You and the emo? Really? Gwen snorted. Oh yeah, it's better than a pretty doll and a jock. Oh wait, actually, you two are perfect for each other. Stan quietly laughed to himself, then muttered out, Right. Dumb people should be together. Suddenly, Jessica burst into tears. What? Why was she crying? Everyone fell silent and looked at her. Come on, Jess. He was only kidding. I awkwardly patted her back. Then she blurted out, I've always had a thing for Stan, okay? Huh? Well, none of us were expecting that. Poor Stan looked like he was gonna faint with shock. Jessica must have been burying these feelings deep down for so long. She was the most popular girl with a reputation to live up to, after all. Through sobs, Jessica looked at Stan and continued, I knew us being here together was my chance to see if you like me. So, I agreed to Philip's deal to see if you're jealous. Tears streamed down her face. But you just think I'm some dumb, pretty doll. She mumbled out an apology to Ned for being insensitive to him, then turned to Stan, sobbed, I'm not a porcelain doll. I have feelings. and left. Oh, wow. I didn't see that coming. I guess I feel kinda bad for her. And also guilty. But hold up. Philip's deal? Oh, so he pulled that out to make me jealous too? That night, we had another meeting. Yawn. This one was as dull as it sounds. Well, until we started discussing the meaning behind this detention. Hey, since when did detentions go on for this long? It's been 2 weeks already. Ned looked concerned. We all agreed. We'd learned how to live in some sort of harmony together, but still, we need to go outside. Also, my family would be worrying, right? There's two, I hope. Then the next morning, Philip was trying to de-jam the air vent in the kitchen when he waved us all over. He pointed up at something small with a tiny red light on it. Ned and he took it down. It was a camera. It could be a security camera, Jessica said. My house also has a few inside, in case of intruders or something. Gwen sneered. Duh, your house is a freaking mansion. Here, there's no need for a security cam. We decided to spread out and look for more cameras. In total, we found 5, all hidden around the place, including in a plant pot and fixed to a picture frame. It was freaky to think there could be more scattered around the place. Ugh. We gathered in the living room to discuss what to do about this, when suddenly the front door opened and in walked the principal and some other man I'd never seen before. Huh? Who is he? Did this mean we could finally go home? The other man started talking. Hi, everyone. I'm Kevin, and you are the participants in my exciting reality show. Your principal here put you all forward for this, as I wanted kids with 6 varying personalities. Gwen stood up and shouted, What? Is this for real? I added, There's no way my parents would have agreed to this. They did, the principal grinned. They signed the documents. They all think you are at training camp. Kevin added, Keep up the good work, guys. The viewers are loving all this drama and attitude. Jessica screamed out, You can't do this! It isn't right! We'll keep you here for some more time to see how this project goes. Don't worry, you'll all get scholarships after this. That is, as long as you cooperate. We watched as they took away the cameras we'd found. And, yep, you guessed it, they locked the door behind them. Then we gathered in the spot in the kitchen, which didn't have any cameras in it, and whispered about what we should do next. Ned suggested, I've done my calculations, and if we join all our clothes together, we can climb down from the window. We were about 4 floors up, so guess this was possible. Under Ned's instruction, we all wet our clothes before we joined them, as apparently this would make them less likely to tear. I'll go, Philip added. I mean, I'm way stronger than the rest of you, and I'm the fastest, so I'll reach the cop station in record time, report those jerks, then send help. So the plan was set, and we all clung onto the end of the clothes rope as Phil climbed down it. It was kinda impressive watching him abseil down the building, and he was like a real-life Spider-Man. When he reached the bottom, we hid the clothes rope in the wardrobe and slid a piece of paper under the apartment door, so Philip could find our room again. Now it was a waiting game. We all tried to carry on as normal, as we were aware of the hidden cameras. Suddenly, the door barged open, and in walked the principal, Kevin, and 4 massive dudes. Oh no! Jessica frightenedly whispered. Those men instantly started collecting our stuff. When one of them picked up Gwen's hat, she charged at him. Get off of my stuff, creep! The man grabbed her around the waist with one arm and pulled her across the room. She thrashed, kicked, and screamed. She might have been big, but she's still a teenage girl, so she was no match for him. Jessica, Ned, and I all clustered together, not knowing what to do. Only Stan seemed to keep his quiet and calm. With a grin on his face, Kevin shouted, Well, that wasn't very clever now, was it? So we're moving you somewhere new before you're discovered. Right at that moment, Philip ran into her room, followed by some cops. There they are! It's them! They locked us up in here! The principal straightened his tie, then in a polite tone said, Oh, please. This is a misunderstanding. I'm the principal of Xavier Springs High School, and these are the particularly delinquent students who are all in detention. We're administering a special education program for them. And here's their teacher. He pointed over to Kevin. Liar! I shouted. They just made up excuses to punish us and trap us in here. There's hidden cameras and we're on some reality TV show. Ignore her. She has, mental issues. She'll do anything to get out of detention. Then he pointed at Gwen. Look, officer, how could we not have special treatment for an aggressive girl like that? Don't you think? We all shouted and tried to explain, but our words jumbled together. The only one who remained silent was, no surprise, Stan. The cops searched around, but found nothing. They thought we were only unruly teens trying to bail on detention. They were about to leave when Stan calmly walked over to them, pulled out one of the cameras we'd found the other day from his pocket, and passed it to them. Then, Stan, still without any words, pulled out a vintage recorder, pressed the button, and we all heard the whole conversation about TV shows and the principal's threats. Whoa! Nice work, Stan! The cops instantly arrested them, and we were taken back to our families, who all sobbed with joy on our return. So, what came next? Well, my high school got a new principal, and this one hasn't given me detention. Yet. The former principal and Kevin and his whole crew are in serious trouble with the cops. Looks like they might end up in jail. As for the 6 of us, well, we formed an unbreakable friendship. Philip got a sports scholarship, and I'm super proud of him. He also told his dad how he was feeling, and they sorted things out. Ned finally stood up for himself to his parents, and now they're trying to be more understanding. He also has a girlfriend and just won first prize of the state in physics. The nerd. Jessica and Stan are an official couple, and they don't care what other people think of them. They're actually super cute together. But shush! Don't tell them I said that. Gwen decided to leave this town and go study at an all-girls boarding school. She just started dating a girl there named Claire. She sounds really happy. We're all glad to hear. So, I guess Miss Tough Cookie has a soft side after all. And me? Well, I went from a lonely and awkward girl to having 5 unlikely best friends and a wonderful boyfriend. Yep, I'm now with Philip. Guess being in detention wasn't so bad after all. Cheers!
Really? You're from Korea? No way. You sound just like a native speaker. Richard jumped up in surprise as I told him I came from South Korea. Yeah, I'm 100% Korean, I answered him, giggling. I had spent hours every day practicing my English. Guess it has paid off. But that was 6 years ago already. I'm Jenny, by the way, and I'm Korean. At the time I was 21, I joined an online English speaking club where I first met Richard, who never in a million years did I think I'd fall in love with. But that's exactly what happened. Ever since that very first class, we started talking every day, and the sparks between us were undeniable. He always mentioned how he wished I could be in the Czech Republic with him, and I found myself daydreaming about our future wedding. Okay, so I was getting ahead of myself, but he was just so amazing. After a month of talking nonstop, I realized I was probably going to fail college if I didn't start setting my priorities straight. But all I could think about was him. And whenever we weren't chatting, I was stalking him on social media. And every time I saw him tagged with another girl, I got so jealous. This couldn't be healthy. I mean, I hadn't even met him in real life. But still, we continued to fall for each other. And he even introduced me to his 2 best friends, Anastasia and Pavel, via video chat. But not as blossoming as my love life. I was failing miserably at college. I'd always been the one who laughed at my lovesick friends, and now I was no better than them. This wasn't right. Something had to change. So even though it was killing me inside to do this, one night before sitting down on my desk to work on my assignment, I just picked up my phone and blocked his WhatsApp, deactivated my Facebook, and all without letting him know. Yep, I full-on ghosted him. It was such a hard decision, because that night, instead of getting anything done for the assignment, I found myself lying in bed with a tear-soaked pillow. It hurt so much, but I had to think about my future. My parents would kill me if I didn't get a good job. I couldn't let them down. Anyway, Pavel messaged me a few days later saying Richard had gone totally crazy and he'd never seen him this upset before. He barely ate anything and would drink all day. He's not much different from a zombie now. But I stayed unfazed. Bet he'd be okay though. He was young and handsome and girls were always after him. He'd get over me soon. And I'd get over him, right? If only it were that easy. I missed him every single day. Even though we'd been thousands of miles apart, he somehow always made me feel so safe, like he was right there next to me. What had I done? I'd ruined everything. Ugh. Instead of wasting time overthinking, it'd be better to put all my energy into my studies for now, right? And it worked. When graduation came around, I was the top student in my class and even got accepted on an exchange program in Australia. Without even thinking, I texted Richard to tell him the good news. I apologized for disappearing on him and said it had messed with my mind because I hadn't expected to fall for him so hard. I had just needed some time to finish my studies, but now I was ready to reconnect again. Well, he'd seen my messages, but there was no reply. It felt like someone had punched me in the heart. Hours later, he finally replied and said, "Sorry, Jenny, I'll get in touch soon. Now isn't the best time." I couldn't believe the words I was reading. I could actually hear the sound of my heart shattering, but it served me right. I was the one who'd gotten rid of him. He deserved better. But still, I stalked him every day online, and then I realized the only way to solve this would be to fly to the Czech Republic and find him. First, though, I had my exchange program in Australia. I bought a new phone and got a new number for the trip to leave my old one in Korea for my uncle who was always complaining about his outdated phone. Those 3 months in Australia were awesome, and I got my mind off things for a little. I was ready to start fresh when I got back from the trip, until my uncle told me that someone had texted me on my old phone, but because he didn't know English, he didn't know if it was for me or not. I immediately checked it, and there was a message from Richard that said, "Jenny, I'm so sorry for my last message. I miss you so much. Your smile, your eyes, your voice. I hope you can give me another chance. Love, Richard." OMG! Months had passed since he'd sent it, and the worst part of all is that my uncle had read the message, and so it said seen. This was a disaster. Okay, but I had to focus on the positive. He missed me. Maybe it wasn't too late. I tried to call him, but he didn't answer, so I texted him and explained what had happened. He finally replied and said he thought I'd given up on him. I'd never give up on him. We then had a proper phone call. "I am still thinking about you all the time. Why didn't you send me a Facebook message?" The words tumbled out of my mouth in a rush, as if I was afraid I would lose contact with him again in any sec. Suddenly, he went all quiet. And then he told me he'd recently met someone, and that he hoped I'd understand and still want to be friends. I felt devastated. Why was it so hard for us? But in the end, there was no other choice for me. I just wished him well and hung up. All I could do now was move on. It was time to find someone else to date. Clearly, Richard and I weren't meant to be. My heart hurt, but I found a job and threw myself into it, giving it all my attention. Eventually, I got promoted, and after 5 years, I was able to help my parents pay off their debt. I even moved up to a management position. Of course, during this time I dated a bit, but I couldn't make any of the relationships last. I just missed Richard all the time. I kept dreaming of us spending Christmas together. It was so frustrating. I mean, it had been 5 years, and we hadn't spoken at all. Why couldn't I just get over him? I occasionally went on his Facebook page, but all I could see was his profile pic that remained the same for years. I'd unfriended Anastasia and Pavel, too, so I couldn't stalk them either. For all I knew, he could be someone's husband now, maybe even a dad. And yet still, I never gave up hope that maybe we'd meet in real life, our paths would cross, and we'd finally get to be together. I couldn't stop thinking about this. And then 3 weeks before Christmas, I got a new following request on Instagram. I couldn't believe it. It was Pavel, and he was now married to Anastasia. This made me so happy. And he told me they were going on their honeymoon to Korea and hoped to see me. OMG, this was so exciting. I desperately wanted to ask him about Richard, but I was terrified to hear that he had kids or something. Anastasia messaged me too and asked how I was doing. I told her I was still single because I worked all the time. Hey, there was no way I could tell her it was because I was still obsessed with Richard. Anyway, the week flew by, and finally I was at the airport awaiting to meet Pavel and Anastasia in real life. They both looked so sweet, and I gave them the biggest hugs. After hugging them, I noted someone standing behind them. OMG. Was that Richard? What was he doing there? I was so stunned I couldn't move. It was really him. Pavel broke the silence by saying, "We brought Richard along for you, Jenny. Feel free to hit him, bite him, kick him, or whatever you want to do if you think he deserves it." Out of complete shock, I just burst into tears. It had been 6 long years of total silence, and now here he was, looking at me. I asked myself, could I hug him? But I didn't even get a chance to answer my thought because he ran towards me and picked me up in his arms, squeezing me tightly. Then he whispered in my ear, "I'm so sorry, Jenny. Please don't cry. I'm here. I won't leave you. I promise." Could I trust him, though? I was still in shock as I drove them to their hotel, and then again later when I drove to take them out for some Korean food. I was nervous about hanging out with them all, but we seriously had the best night eating, drinking, and laughing. The next day, Pavel and Anastasia would start their honeymoon. So maybe then Richard and I would have some time alone together to talk about whatever was left between us. After dropping them back at their hotel, I was driving away when suddenly I saw Richard running back towards me. He said he wanted to tell me something, so I pulled over and we sat down on a bench to talk. I listened as he told me that over the past 6 years he tried to date other girls, but it never worked out because I was always in the back of his mind. He said he'd spend most of his time working so he could save up to visit me or buy me a ticket so I could come and visit him. It had taken him longer than he'd hoped because his parents had got divorced and he'd been looking after his mom who was super depressed. A few months later, she was diagnosed with cancer, and so he'd had to work even harder to help her pay for treatment. After 3 long years of fighting, she sadly passed away, and ever since then, he'd been feeling so lonely and sad. One day, he asked Pavel to contact me somehow, and when he found out I was still single, he was over the moon and decided it was finally time to come to Korea and see me. He said seeing me in real life had made him fall even more in love with me, which he hadn't thought was even possible. Then he hugged me tight and I couldn't stop crying. We spent Christmas together, just like I always dreamt of. And well, the rest is history. Here I am now, packing my bags to fly to the Czech Republic to see Richard. I can't wait to meet his family. And you'll never believe it, but we're even planning our wedding. The big question is, where do we live? Should I go there, or should he move to Korea? To be honest, it doesn't matter. As long as we're together, it'll be perfect. So it's true what they say. If something is meant to be, it'll be. Even if it takes a year or 6. All I know is that I'm glad I had the patience because I've never been happier. Oh, I've never been in a negotiation that lasted this long before. I've been here since 3, and it's now 8. Worse still, I hadn't even mentioned the funding yet. I've tried, but it was Dane's fault. He kept on interrupting me and going off topic. As I looked at Dane, who was currently reenacting a soccer game with condiments, I wondered how on earth was he a part of the student council. He might have been a senior, but he was an average grade student who didn't seem to excel at anything. He also exaggerated everything and mainly just messed around. I should never have agreed with Dane to arrange the meeting here. Not only had I wasted 5 hours of my life, but it looked like the funding was a no deal. I couldn't take any more of this. Remind me never to listen to Dane, ever again. I grabbed my bag and was about to stand up when Mr. Johnson turned to me. "Ruth, I love your idea. Funding all of it would be a bit of a stretch, but I can go to 80%. And if it becomes a yearly thing, I'll be happy to continue sponsoring it." I stared at him open-mouthed. Did I hear him right? Mr. Johnson, the owner of the local music shop, was actually agreeing to provide a big chunk of the funding for our student talent show? "By the way, I like this Dane guy. Today's been fun." Dane wooed, "Yes, it's a dealio," and enthusiastically shook Mr. Johnson's hand. Wait, I was supposed to be the one to close the deal. Never mind. We had the funding. This was amazing. We did it! Dane punched the air. "Hey, how did you?" He gave a Cheshire cat grin as he replied, "Never expected that, did you? What do you think of me now, Ruth the new president?" I shrugged and laughed. "Hey, how about a celebratory hug, huh?" He lunged at me with open arms. Well, why not? This deserved a celebration after all. We were jumping up and down, and I don't know, maybe I was delirious from the stupidly long meeting or something. But the next thing I knew, we were kissing. OMG! We immediately pulled away from each other and awkwardly looked the other way. After that, he drove me home in silence. Oh no, what was I thinking? Why did I, or anyone breathing, do that? It was Dane. Dane! Can you believe it? Well, okay, I suppose it'd been a difficult couple of months for me. As soon as I became president of the student council, my boyfriend Walter didn't congratulate me. No, instead he broke up with me. We'd been together for 2 years, but recently he'd spoken about marriage and buying a house. Not yet. I want to focus on my career first. But I guess me applying to the students' council and being all busy bee with work frustrated him even more. Now, I tried to distract myself with studying and council work, but I felt like I was getting ever closer to the edge of a cliff, one with hungry sharks circling the bottom. Ugh! And then there were the rumors being spread around school about me. Ruth's just a freshman. She won't be able to hack the pressure. And Ruth's so serious and boring. So I started working harder and harder to prove myself. Hence the talent show project. Only, geez, I was so exhausted, both mentally and physically. This funding news was fantastic. But what was going on with Dane? Maybe he has some kind of secret power of attraction or something. Anyway, after that incident, he flooded me with calls and messages, even though I was crazy busy. After the 12th call in a row, I stopped writing my essay and answered with an annoyed, "What? Hey there, how are you feeling about the weather today?" My name is Ruth, not there, and I don't care about the weather, I'm busy. Busy enough to correct my words like that? I don't think so. Ugh, fine. I agreed to go out for a quick coffee with him just so he'd stop bugging me. I stirred my spoon around my coffee as I glared at him and said, "Will you stop calling me? I need to study." He stuffed the majority of his muffin into his mouth and took ages to chew it. Then he wiped his mouth onto the back of his arm and said, "You do realize all the other council members call you Military Ruth, right? Try not to be so difficult and chillax once, will you?" Wow, that sucked. I didn't expect to be liked by everyone, but I was working my butt off for the council, so they could at least appreciate what I was doing for them. I cleared my throat. I don't care. Work is work. I didn't become the president to make friends. But I know you're not like that, Dane continued. You might be going through a tough time. Still, you're the most stunning person I've ever met. My face brightened up, even blushed. What did he just say? You're beautiful, strong, and independent. He reached out and took my hand, and I tried to ignore the fact it was sticky from his muffin. Ew. I must be the luckiest guy ever to date a girl like you, Ruth. Those other girls are just jealous of you. I mean, you have this hunk, and they don't. Hold up. He said what? Date? I gave him a disgusted, "Who do you think you are?" look. Reading my expression, his face dropped. Oh, I, thought there was something between us. I froze for a few seconds. Was I being too harsh? I mean, he was totally sweet saying those words earlier. Fine. Listen carefully. I'll hang out with you. Not dating. But you have to promise, swear, that you'll never, ever tell anyone about it. I don't know. I mean, he was so immature and annoying, but I guess he was also kind of fun to be around. He made me laugh, and I liked that. All I did was work, work, work. And perhaps that was why Walter broke up with me, wasn't it? Maybe when I hang out with Dane, I should practice being less serious. One Sunday, when we were having brunch at a random cafe of his choice, I asked about his graduation coming up that summer and his plan. Honestly, I haven't thought any further than finishing my freshman year, he said between chewing on his sandwich. How about you? he asked. Well, I want to go to an Ivy League college for a master, of course, preferably Dartmouth, and study social science. Then I want to work for the government, but high up, like a managing role, and really make an impact, Dane shrugged after I finished. Yeah, nice plan. And kept digging in his food. I felt weird. Was I being unrealistic? Or was it just Dane's point of view? But to have a happy relationship, maybe it's best to compromise and accept the differences, right? I snapped myself back into the now. If this whole thing with Dane hadn't happened, I would still be in anguish and despair. It was strange, but I did feel better around him, unlike with Walter. So I should respect his opinions. Gotta learn from my mistake, right? One day, I was at a council meeting planning a fundraiser for the remainder of the talent show money. I decided it was time people saw the real Dane, so I made him event organizer. But this didn't go down well. As in the other council members' eyes, Dane was a lazy, idiotic puppet. Give him a chance. He's the one who persuaded Mr. Johnson to fund the talent show. Please, we never know other people's limits and abilities. Then, this girl, Catherine, sarcastically said, Of course you'd know his ability since he's your boyfriend. You suck at leading. All you care about is your personal feelings. I know. I'll date you. Then I may actually get given a job I deserve. My tongue was tied. I couldn't find a word to defend myself. And at the same time, I was really, really mad at Dane. And worse still, he hadn't even bothered showing up for the meeting. Afterward, I went round to Dane's house and furiously banged on the door. Yelled at him the moment he opened it. How come people know that we've been hanging out? Dane silently scratched his head, eyes open wide, and stared awkwardly at some random spot. Answer me! I continued, but still no reply. I pointed my finger at his face. I just went through a hurricane of rage in a meeting with the council to put you in charge of the fundraiser event. And you didn't even bother showing up. You better do an amazing job, else we'll both be dead. Then I stormed off. Over the next few days, the rumors continued to circulate about me. Clearly, Dane had been bragging to everyone that he'd managed to score himself a stiff girl like me. That I was no tigress, more like a lovely kitten. Now everyone was staring and laughing at me, and made meow sounds at me in the corridors. Someone even filled my seat in the council room with cat food. This was horrible to deal with. But instead of supporting me, Dane went rogue from school for a full week. He also didn't arrange the venue for the fundraiser, meaning we had to reschedule the event. I was left looking bad, so the teacher gave me a lecture on responsibility and strongly advised me to leave the student council. So that's what I did. Catherine's in charge now. After that, I couldn't face school, so I locked myself away in my room and cried as I thought back to all the things that had happened. First, Walter left me. Then everyone else on the council mocked me. Then I lost my position on the council I worked hard for because I put my trust in the wrong person. Ugh, Dane. What he did hurt the most, as he was exactly what others described him as, childish and insensitive. I was torn between never wanting to see him again and also missing him like crazy. Now I had no one. I felt so alone. Ugh, darn it. Loneliness sucked. So when he called me, I answered. He told me he was outside my house. I guess I should at least hear him out, right? Hey, beautiful, listen. He grabbed my hand and looked straight into my eyes. It doesn't matter, okay? The council, the president position, those people don't matter. The most important thing is you being happy, and I'm gonna make you happy. I wanted so much to believe his words. So I let him take me out. We ended up in this noisy restaurant with singing waiting staff. He found it hilarious, but I felt so uncomfortable. Then on the way back, he dragged me into this arcade and left me so he could go on the zombie killing game. As I watched him spin around then shoot, I realized how different we were. I guess I was holding on to him because I'd lost everything else. Who was I anymore? I felt like a stranger to myself. This wasn't me, and Dane wasn't right for me. He rushed over to me and excitingly clung onto my arm. "Ruth, come see my high score." I shook my head and quietly said, "It's over." I pulled my arm free and walked off. After that, I kept to myself, and at school, avoided Dane and my former council members as much as possible. It did hurt when I saw the posters for the talent show around the school, but that wasn't my problem anymore. I did receive a message from Dane saying something about his graduation party, but I skipped it. The truth is, he's just not good for me. Life was a joke to him, and as a result of this, he left me feeling like I was a joke too. I felt so lost. So I'm going to spend the summer with my grandparents out in the country, away from everyone and everything. I need time to heal, so when I come back, I'll be strong, confident, and independent girl I once was. As I really do miss that version of me. Each one of us needs to learn how to overcome things by ourselves, without relying on others, especially when these others in question aren't any good for us.
A lot of kids don't like Mondays, but I do. The start of a new week is full of so many possibilities. And, oh my days, who is she? Whoa, she's beautiful. She is the prettiest girl I've ever seen. She must be new here because I definitely haven't seen her around here before. I'm Evan, and as you can see, I'm kinda short and skinny. I might not be a muscly jock or anything, but I do have a big brain. I'm top of the class in math, sciences, geography, and soy el mejor de la clase en español. I'm proud of my collection of trophies and awards, and as a result, lots of kids in school know who I am. But I don't really like talking to new people. For such a smart guy, I find small talk awkward. It's like the words freeze in my head or something. Anyway, this is the main reason why I've been single for, well, forever. It doesn't matter. I need to focus on my studies anyway. But I do like girls, especially petite girly girls who need me to protect them. Being the smart guy I am, it didn't take me long to find out that the new girl is called Kayla. Kayla. What a sweet name. After a few days of looking through her social media accounts, I'd fallen deep for her. I wanted to tell her how I felt, but I'm just too shy and awkward. So I asked my best friend Liam for advice. Bro, what are you so scared of? You're the #1 guy in this school. Yeah, but only with books. Liam nudged me and said, Only? Dude, it's a big deal being that smart. Girls absolutely love it. You're a bright-looking guy and a top student. Just need to add a little bit of confidence, my friend. I was not sure about that, but what do I know? And Liam is good with girls, so I had to trust him. In fact, I am smart, and I should be proud of it and use it to my advantage. So what should I do to make a move? Now you need to prepare her a gift and surprise her with it in the canteen. Girls love romantic gestures like that. What kind of gift? Don't sweat it. Just get her something you think she'll like. The next day at recess, I carried a box to the canteen. I spotted her sitting with her friends. Oh boy, this was terrifying, but also kind of exciting. As I walked over to her, I noticed how pretty she looked today. Suddenly, she stood up and went to the food stall. Okay, so she was taller than I thought. Yeah, she's quite a bit taller than I thought. Oh no, she's a giant in comparison to me. Abort mission, abort! I turned around and started to walk off when I accidentally bumped into someone and dropped my box. All of my trophies and awards scattered across the floor, along with the love letter I'd written for Kayla. My eyes locked on it, and I was about to leap forward and grab it, but the girl picked it up. Then in a really loud voice said, Oh, look! Evan has a crush on Kayla! Who knew a nerd could have such high standards? Or should I say, tall standards? Then everyone burst out laughing. Oh boy, this was embarrassing, so I hurried out of there. Liam, who had been waiting for me outside, stopped me as soon as I passed the door. Dude, what was that? Are you really giving her those as a gift? He snatched the box out of my hand and took a look inside. Well, you said to get her what she liked. And you also said girls like smart guys, so don't these show off enough of my charm? No, not like that. I just expected you to get her a teddy bear or some flowers. Evan, this ain't it. So this was it. My life was over. I'll be a laughingstock forever. I'll have to convince my parents to let me move schools. No, to let me move planets. Huh? It's from Kayla. What? She says she likes me too. Is this thing broken or something? Wow. She says she's heard a lot about me and she admires my achievements. And she wants to hang out sometime. Not long after that, we started dating. She's such a fun girl to be around. But there's one thing bugging me. She's so tall and standing next to her constantly reminds me that I am so short. It never really bothered me before, but it does when I'm around her. People have always said I'm small-framed, but being next to her makes me feel like I'm a hobbit or something. I decided to bulk up, so I started going to the gym, but it was so hot and sweaty in there, it made me feel sick, so I gave up. I was born this way anyway. There's nothing I can do about it. Meanwhile, Kayla didn't seem to bother that I was smaller than her, and being seen in public with me didn't faze her at all. But I don't know, I just didn't feel comfortable. So after class, when she was waiting for me by the door to go to lunch together, I muttered out some excuse about needing the library, and I'd meet her there in a bit. I know it sounds bad, but I didn't want to hang out with her at school, as I didn't want the other kids gawping at us and making fun of our height difference. I've been in here all lunchtime. I don't want to see Kayla. Oh no, there she is. Phew, she's gone. Oh, why do they put these things so high up? Here, let me. I turned to see it was Kayla. Then she easily grabbed the book and passed it to me. Startled, I peered around to check no one had seen this and spotted two girls giggling and whispering to each other. This was so humiliating. It was bad enough that Kayla was bigger than me, but she was a sporty girl, so she was also stronger than me. One lunchtime, I was struggling to open my bottle of Coke. Suddenly, Kayla appeared, grabbed it off me, and even though I muttered out I wanted to do it, she ignored me and opened it with ease. Then, one night while I was studying, Liam texted me telling me to go check my Insta. There was a picture of me sitting on Kayla's lap in the school garden. What? And then beneath it were loads of comments such as, "Whoa, little baby Evan with She-Hulk Kayla." And one of my friends even said, "Clearly Evan's the wife and Kayla's the husband." No, this couldn't be happening. That afternoon in the school garden, I'd asked Kayla to check my back for an insect bite. But before I could stop her, she'd pulled me onto her lap to check. But some jerk had taken a photo and posted it online saying, "Little Evan is sitting on the lap of his Hulk girlfriend." I was furious, especially with my friend's comment. I mentioned it to Kayla, but she just shrugged and told me they were only messing about and it was no big deal. After that, I didn't want to be around Kayla so much. She just made me feel so small, and I hated being laughed at by the other kids. A few days later, I was running in PE class when I tripped over my own feet and fell so hard onto the ground that I almost fainted. I lay there seeing stars and feeling like an idiot when a load of kids gathered around me. Kayla was also in the sports hall having her training lesson, so she ran over to me and ordered everyone to give me space. Then she bent down and lifted me up in her arms and carried me across the room. This was mortifying. So with the last bit of my energy, I shouted, "Put me down! I'm not a baby!" "Oh, okay. I'm just trying to help you." "I don't need your help. It's embarrassing. It's like you're the man in our relationship. You make me feel inferior." Everyone was gawping at us and whispering. Then Kayla put me down and walked off in silence. She looked upset, and I felt kinda bad. That night, Kayla messaged me asking to meet me in the park. When I got there, she was already waiting for me on a bench. I sat down next to her and said, "Look, Kayla, I'm sorry about before. I was just..." "Stop. I want us to stop. You care too much about what other people think. So what if I'm taller and bigger than you? Who cares? You've never been small or weak in my eyes." I was speechless, and she continued, "You just don't value or appreciate me. I know you avoid me at school. I don't want a boyfriend who's embarrassed to be seen with me. I deserve better than that. So it's over, Evan." Then she stood up and walked off. I watched her go, and even though I wanted to run after her and beg her to forgive me, I didn't. I just sat there all alone, feeling like a fool. That night I thought about it a lot. I knew she was right. I've been a jerk, and now I'd lost my amazing, funny, beautiful girlfriend. I shouldn't have let other people's opinions affect me so much because, on reflection, they were irrelevant. I liked her, and she made me happy. So what if she could reach books that I couldn't? Thinking about it, she was actually really helpful to have around. A few days later, I texted Kayla to apologize and asked her for another chance, but she didn't reply. So I arrived at her doorstep with flowers in a box. Kayla opened the door and frowned at me. I'm an idiot. A great, big, small idiot. But I really like you, Kayla, and I want everyone to know it. I really like Kayla! Please give me another chance, as I'm miserable without you. She stayed silent for a sec, but it felt like an eternity to me. I felt like I could faint until she spoke up. Yes, she smiled at me. I'll give you another chance, but don't mess it up this time. I leaped into her arms and hugged her. Yeah, she was holding me in the air, but I didn't care. I was just so happy she was my girlfriend again. After that, I passed her the box which was full. No, not of my trophies and awards, but tubs of strawberry ice cream, her favorite flavor. I might be small and Kayla might be tall, and yeah, okay, maybe this does look funny to some people, but I don't care what anyone thinks anymore. I'm just over the moon, stars, hey, the entire solar system that she's agreed to be my girlfriend again.
My phone beeped with a new message.
Emma, I've got something to do nearby, so let's meet there. See ya.
It was from Tony, my childhood friend from the orphanage back in Missouri. Yep, that's right. I ended up in an orphanage after my mom passed away when I was only 4 years old. But things were even worse for Tony and him. They'd been left outside the orphanage door without anyone even knowing who their parents were. And now here I am, on my way to visit his grave, as today's his death anniversary. Time flies. I can hardly believe it's been 10 years already. I picked up some flowers, then drove to the cemetery. Tony was already there waiting for me. I smiled and waved, but my heart felt heavy. Back when we were 14, we'd been joined at the hip, Tony, Thomas, and me. I had a secret crush on Thomas, but I never got the chance to tell him. It had all happened so fast on that day. We were just kids, young and dumb. We'd snuck out to go play by the riverbank. One minute we were splashing each other in the river. The next moment, Thomas was being carried away in the current. I tried to save him, but Tony pulled me back to shore. Even thinking about it now, I still couldn't help but burst into tears.
Don't cry, Em. I'll always be here for you.
And I knew he would be. Deep down, I knew Tony always had feelings for me. But I didn't feel the same way. After that, Tony drove me home. Seeing my exhausted look, he said before I went inside,
Get a good night's sleep, Em. Remember, we've got that interview tomorrow.
Gosh, I almost forgot. Tony probably thought I was the worst employee ever. And yes, you can guess it. Tony is my boss. After years in the orphanage, he was adopted by a super smart family that had inspired him to strive to become someone important, and he'd eventually built a food startup. Anyway, the following morning, despite still feeling worn out, I had no choice but to put on a brave face to go to work, as I had a marketing team to lead. But as I walked into the lobby, a guy bumped into me. He helped me up and frantically apologized, explaining he was in a rush. I looked up and was about to nag him, but wait, why does he look so familiar? In fact, he looked exactly like... It's you! I stammered, but I couldn't even finish my sentences because he'd rushed into the lift and the doors had closed. I must have been seeing things. Honestly, throughout the whole interview, I could barely concentrate. Could there be two people looking that similar on this earth? I was lost in thought when the next applicant came in, and it was him! Both Tony and I stared in shock. He was the spitting image of Thomas. But he couldn't be. I mean, Thomas had died years ago. We both were too stunned to say anything until his voice broke the silence.
Hi, I'm Dustin, and I'm here to interview for the marketing position.
I looked at Tony, and he looked just as confused as I did. But, yeah, It wasn't Thomas. This guy was from Illinois and had never even been to Missouri. Okay, so here's Thomas's doppelganger. Fair enough. The interview went well, and even though he was a bit arrogant, he knew what he was doing, so we hired him. When I left the room, surprisingly, Dustin was still waiting for me outside. He offered to treat me to lunch as an apology for earlier. I agreed, as I was desperate to ask him more questions. During lunch, I kept mentioning the orphanage, some of Thomas's hobbies and things he hated, but Dustin didn't even bat an eyelid. I was disappointed, because I really hoped Dustin would actually be Thomas. That night, I barely slept. I couldn't stop thinking about Dustin. It's ridiculous, but I still had a strong feeling that he really was my childhood sweetheart. Suddenly, I got a message from Tony.
Saw you hanging out with Dustin. Wake up, Em. He's not Thomas.
Ugh, I didn't need to hear that. The next day, I couldn't take my eyes off of Dustin. At lunch, I watched as he put honey on his watermelon, and I almost freaked out. That was exactly what Thomas used to do. Oh my, I blurted out. I then told Tony what I just saw as soon as he sat down, but he just laughed and said,
Honestly, Em, tons of people do that. Do you really think that our Thomas could be that arrogant?
Seeing that I was still unfazed, he continued.
But if you still want to check, just give him a peach. Things can change, but allergies don't, right?
OMG, Tony was a genius. He probably was just kidding, but I was super serious. So the next day, I bought Dustin a peach pie to welcome him to the team. But to my surprise, he ate it up with pleasure and seemed totally fine. Okay, clearly I needed to let this go. He wasn't Thomas. End of. But if only things were that simple. And even though I knew Dustin wasn't Thomas, I still felt attracted to him. He was smart and sweet, and so much fun to be around. Eventually, we started hanging out and became very close. We didn't actually make anything official, but we were low-key dating already. However, it was impossible to hide things from Tony. One time, our company went on a team bonding weekend, and we'd arranged a tennis competition. We had to pair up, so obviously I would go with Dustin, but as we're about to go sign up, then Tony came to ask me to be his partner too. My God, it was so awkward. Then Tony said in a very sulky tone,
Okay, how about we have a little competition? The winner gets to pair up with Emma.
And so they had a swimming race. That's so embarrassing. I knew Dustin couldn't swim, so I started to panic, but he got in the pool anyway. Obviously, Tony won, but who cares? He was acting like a child. I rushed over to help Dustin, who was left coughing and choking on the water, and at that moment, I realized that I was falling for him so much. But since then, there were rumors in the company that Dustin was only flirting with me to get promoted. One morning, we were walking through the lobby together when two girls started whispering about us. So Dustin took my hand and went straight to the girls saying,
I love Emma. What's wrong with that? Tell me. Go on.
At that exact moment, Tony appeared and asked if he could have a word with Dustin in his office. I was so nervous. Now everyone knew we were in some weird triangle, and I didn't like it one bit. Then one of my colleagues overheard Tony telling Dustin that if he didn't leave me alone, he'd be fired. I couldn't believe it. I went to find Tony right away, and before I could even confront him, he said,
Yes, it's true. I asked those girls to start the rumors, and I also asked that jerk to give up on you. It was me. I did it all. I just don't get it, Em. Why have I ever been good enough for you?
Tony, wait.
It's been 10 years. Why couldn't you give me a chance? Why can't you let Thomas go? Some guy who looks like him walks up and you totally forget about me? He's a loser compared to Thomas.
Don't you dare call him a loser, I said.
See? In the end, you still care about him only, not me.
Tony shouted, then stormed off. I hated to be in this situation. On the one hand, I truly liked Dustin, but Tony was not only my lifesaver, but also my best friend, who'd stuck by my side through all the highs and lows. What a dilemma. In the end, I decided to have a little space from Dustin, just until things cooled down. Maybe then the rumors would stop and people would quit being so negative about him. But that wasn't to be so. You see, our new product that hadn't even been released yet suddenly appeared on the website of our direct competitor. Someone must have leaked the confidential file. But who? An investigation was opened and all of our computers were checked. You won't believe it, but the IT team had been able to recover a deleted email that had been sent to our rivals from Dustin's outbox. Dustin denied it, and he demanded to check the CCTV. That's how we caught Mike, one of our senior employees, at Dustin's computer sneakily doing something. And to think, he'd put the blame on Dustin. After the truth came out, I went over to Dustin, but he seemed mad as he said,
"You think I'm a jerk too, don't you? That's why you've been giving me the cold shoulder."
I told him I never believed he'd done it. Then I took his hand. "I'm so sorry. It's just that I've been through some stuff." Then we hugged. Oh my, I'd missed him so much. But the drama didn't end there. The info leaked had caused our company huge losses. We had thousands of meetings, and the stress was unreal. Feeling so deflated, I went up to the rooftop to get some air. Suddenly, I heard Dustin's voice somewhere. He was on the phone with someone talking about some plan to steal our company's products. No way! Without even thinking, I charged over and snatched his phone away to see that he was talking to Mike? Oh my God! Had they been accomplices from the beginning? I was so angry, but actually more disappointed. So I asked him to resign and stay away from my sight. I know I should have exposed him to the whole company instead of letting him go that easy, but I guess my heart couldn't bear to do that. I felt so bad, especially towards Tony, the best friend who's always by my side, while I was busy chasing after a jerk. I lost contact with Dustin after that, and I barely had time to think about it because our company was on the brink of bankruptcy. But one day, I got a call from him, followed by a message saying,
"Please don't ignore me. I've got something important to tell you."
So we met up the next day at a coffee shop, and as soon as I saw him, I said, "Look, Dustin, I've had enough of your lies. Please just get to the point." Then he replied,
"Emma, I admit that I only came to work for your company to steal your ideas. But seeing you and Tony after all these years, and falling for you all over again, well, that wasn't part of my plan."
I was confused. After all these years? What are you talking about? Then he showed me his wrist, and he was wearing a friendship bracelet.
"Remember this? You gave it to me on my birthday 10 years ago."
OMG. What was going on? I couldn't believe my eyes. I'd given this to Thomas. But then why? But the peach, I continued. He just laughed and said,
"I overheard you guys plan, so I made sure to take allergy meds just before."
Then he went on to explain that he was Thomas, and that he'd been lucky enough to be saved that day on the river. There was a family who were out in the river searching for their drowned son, but instead of finding him, they found Thomas, and so they kindly adopted him and changed his name to their son's, Dustin. This was insane. Here was Thomas right in front of me, after all these years. And guess what? His adoptive father is the director of our rival company, and so he'd asked Dustin, or should I say Thomas, to come and infiltrate our company. Thomas kept apologizing for it, saying how much it had tormented him, and that he just missed me and had to tell me the truth. My head was spinning. This was all too much. I needed a moment to think it all through. But in the end, we decided that he could help our company by uploading a post to expose the truth. Obviously, as soon as Tony heard about it all, he was furious. He was mostly mad at me because I'd covered for Thomas. He'd even stopped talking to me for a while. But putting that aside, after Thomas's post, things got better for our company. We were able to launch new products as scheduled, and he even contributed some capital to help with our new project. Now our companies are still rivals, but at least it's now a fair competition. As for Tony and I, we eventually made up. He came to find me one day after work and said,
I'm so sorry for how childish I've been. I was just jealous of you and Thomas. I was too selfish to consider your feelings. But you and Thomas, I want you guys to be together. You two are made for each other.
I couldn't stop crying as he said that. It meant so much to me. And guess what? It has now been a whole year since Thomas came back into our lives, and the three of us are back to being the best of friends. Oh, and I should probably add that Thomas and I are engaged. We're so happy, and we're even opening an orphanage together for homeless kids like us. I'm going through many phases, but I finally found peace in life. I guess it all worked out after all. This? Or this one? Ugh, this is such an impossible decision. It's my senior year, so I wanted this last prom to be the most memorable. I wonder which guy will ask me to prom first. Adam's cute, but he's so hot and cold with me. Then there's Devin, the school's hottest swimmer. Oh, and I also heard rumors that Ethan, the most popular jock in school, was planning to ask me to prom at the next baseball game. My buzzing phone broke me from my thoughts. It was a message from my friend Donna saying, "Phoebe, have you seen the news? Lockdown starts tomorrow." Oh my God, this couldn't be legit. Could it? What about prom? Then I received another message from the prom committee.
Due to the current rule changes, unfortunately, prom's been cancelled.
No! Unbelievable! My prom! It was another message. Geez, I was getting sick of them. I hoped it would be Donna telling me this was all a joke and prom wasn't cancelled, but no. I glanced at it and saw a text message from Jacob, a classmate I never spoke to. That's weird. Curious, I opened the message. Hey, Jacob. So, what do you want to ask me?
Hi, and, can you help me model for a moment? I'm applying for the Art Institute in Chicago, and the application deadline is tomorrow. But I need to submit a drawing.
I'll be posing for you to draw? But I've never modeled before. This sounds super important. Shouldn't you ask a professional?
Well, don't worry. I already have all the ideas, and I think you are the most suitable person to model for me, as you're a natural beauty, and that will show in my work. Especially your beautiful eyes.
Okay then, if you say so. Let's do it. Jacob then instructed me how to pose. After that, he took out a piece of paper and started sketching carefully. Meanwhile, I was sitting there trying my best to help my friend by not moving. Now that I had time to really look at him, I think Jacob is really handsome. Especially when he's so focused on drawing like this. Why has it taken me 3 years of high school to realize this? Strange. How can such a good-looking guy be pretty much invisible in my class? Maybe it's because he's a little on the shy side?
Done! What do you think?
Wow! You're so talented! I like it. I like it a lot.
Really? When can we meet again? I'll give you this drawing.
Oh, I thought you were going to send it with your college application.
Give me a sec.
Just like that, he disappeared from the screen without even answering my question. After a while, Jacob returned with a picture frame in his hand. Then he put the picture he'd just drawn of me in it and hung it up in his room.
In the meantime, I'll hang it here, so it's safe and, well, I get to, see you every day.
Why did he say it like that? He's totally making me blush by now. What about your college application?
Actually, I submitted them already.
So, you tricked me?
I'm sorry, it's not like that. Actually, I wanted to ask you something else, but because I'm really nervous, I ended up blurting out that I wanted you to model for me instead.
So what exactly do you want to ask me? If you don't talk, I'll hang up.
Wait! I know it's canceled and all, but I don't want to spend the rest of my life not knowing your answer. So, if I asked you to go to prom with me, would you say yes?
I don't know. Only when I receive an official invitation will I consider it. I was giggling to myself at this point. Our class's shyest guy was being so genuine. But then he took a deep breath and said boldly,
Phoebe, will you come to prom with me?
Aw, I have to admit, I was really touched by Jacob's invitation. So I replied, yes!
Dinner's ready, hun.
Oh, that's my mom calling. I gotta go.
Yeah, you go eat. Thank you. I've received the answer I needed anyway.
I gave him my cutest smile and then ended the video call. Swoon? My heart was fluttering. After that moment, I couldn't stop imagining how great it'd be. Only if we weren't stuck in this stupid lockdown. Jacob would have escorted me to prom and, oh my, imagine how perfect we would look together. Such a pity. Now all I could do was just think about him all day. A few days passed, only Jacob hadn't contacted me. Not once. This made me antsy. I was constantly checking my phone. Then there were times I was so close to texting him first. But for what reason, though? I had nothing to tell him. Aha! Got it!
Phoebe, what happened?
Jacob, I've screwed up.
Calm down and tell me what's happened.
I almost burned the house down.
Huh? What? What did you do?
I forgot to turn off the stove while frying the eggs. You see? Does it look like crime scene evidence?
What have you done to the poor pan?
That worked a treat, as after that, we video chatted almost every day and talked about all kinds of things, from our dreams for the future to our favorite puddings. On the one rare day we didn't chat, I felt myself feeling restless. Is it possible that I was lovesick? One time, while I was standing in the garden talking to Jacob, Nancy, my gossipy sister, caught me. Expectedly, during dinner that night, Nancy told my mother that I had a boyfriend. Ugh, what a snitch. Why did my mother give birth to me and her as well? Fine. And FYI, my mom is one of those super strict types of parents.
Phoebe, what did I tell you? Before graduation, you can't date.
Mom put her fork down and gave me a serious look. But we're just friends.
No buts. From now on, focus on studying and stop contacting him. Understand?
Annoyed, I stormed off to my room. That night, I couldn't sleep a wink. I longed to hear Jacob's voice so badly. I missed him. Then, at midnight, I somehow ended up picking up my phone and texting him. I know it's late, but are you awake? I'm so stupid. Of course he wasn't going to be awake at this. Oh, it's Jacob.
I'm awake. You want to talk?
So he called me, and we talked in whispers so no one overheard me. I told Jacob about the argument with my mom. He advised me not to be angry with her because she just cared about me. Then he said,
On your birthday this year, I'll come over and prove to your parents that you've chosen the right person.
Choose the right person? What do you mean?
I mean, will you be my girlfriend?
I was still feeling somewhat confused when he suddenly started singing.
But darling, just kiss me slow. Your heart is all I own, and in your eyes you're holding mine.
I love that Ed Sheeran song. My heart melted with each word Jacob sang, and I found myself softly saying, I do. Oh my God, he's officially my boyfriend now. This was so exciting. I just wish I was back at school to show him off. We secretly chatted every day, and he was the ray of light in my boring days during the lockdown. But then one day, he didn't reply. I didn't think much of it at first. You know, maybe he was busy drawing or something. But then, when the day was coming to an end, and I still hadn't received a reply from him, I started to freak out. Was he sick? Only at past midnight, he finally messaged me.
I'm sorry. I feel kinda down today, so I couldn't talk to you.
Oh no, why was he so sad? Hearing this, I couldn't be patient anymore. So I called him right away, over and over, but the only response was a long beep, then followed by a text a little later.
I don't want you to see me in this state. I'm sorry.
What was wrong? He was always such an optimistic guy. Something really terrible must have happened to make him feel like that. Feeling anxious, I continued to call him, until eventually he gave in and answered. Then he told me what was wrong. Lockdown was the final straw for his wearing parents, and now they were getting a divorce. I felt so sorry for him. Oh, how I wished I could have run to him right away. He actually only lived a few blocks away from me. So we planned to sneak out to see each other in the park. From a distance, of course. The plan was that I would open the door on the slide to run outside, while Mom was in the kitchen.
Phoebe, what are you doing?
I...
Come inside and set the table. The food's getting cold.
My plan failed completely. I'm sorry, I couldn't get out. My mom caught me. A few minutes later, Jacob's reply showed up. Turned out he'd already snuck out and had been waiting for me at the park. I felt so guilty, so I called him at once. He tried to put on a smile, but I knew he was really bummed out, so I blew him a kiss to cheer him up. This really brightened him up. Then he said that as soon as lockdown was over, he was giving me a real kiss. Just like that, time went on, and we learned how to make the most of this relationship in the pandemic era. Everything was good until one day he told me some news that struck me like a lightning bolt. He'd received an offer letter from the art college in Chicago. He'd got in! Of course, Jacob was excited, and I was really happy for him. But Chicago was a whole different state, so I'd never get to see him. Jacob said he was still wondering if he should go or not, as he didn't want to leave me. Me neither, but how could I tell him not to go? Jacob, please go chase your dream. Don't give it up over a girl whose hand you've never held.
If I go, then what about us?
Just leave it. Whatever will be, will be. After that day, there were no more messages or calls from Jacob. Perhaps he was busy arranging things for college. I missed him so much, but I had to let him live his life. Then, on the same day Jacob left, I received a package. I took it up to my room and opened it. Inside was the painting which he had asked me to model for. It's really beautiful. The painting! Now how am I supposed to forget you when I have to look at this every day, Jacob? The city eventually came out of lockdown, and things were pretty much back to some kind of normal. It was just that I couldn't stop thinking about Jacob and how different things would be if he was still here. We hadn't spoken since that time we broke up. I guess it was easier this way, but it didn't stop it from sucking. And to make it even worse, today's my birthday, and all I could think about was him. I was sitting there trying to fake delight as my family brought me out a cake and sang me happy birthday. Hang on, who's that? Standing behind my parents? Oh my, it can't be. It's Jacob!
Oh, yes. I found this one loitering outside. He seems keen to see you, and, well, it is your birthday, so I suppose I'll let the no boys rule slide for today.
Mom smiled. I couldn't help it. I darted out of the chair and leapt into Jacob's arms. I asked him why he was here, and grinning he replied,
I have a promise to keep.
Then I introduced him to everyone, and being the perfect guy he was, he's really mature and friendly toward my family, and they love him. But soon the day ended, and he went to leave, so with reluctance I walked him out to say goodbye. Jacob then held my hand and said,
Look, Phoebe, when I was away, I realized how much I like you, and if you have the same feelings, could we give this long-distance relationship a try?
Without giving me time to answer, he continued,
I'll try my best to contact and come back here often. I will never leave you feeling lonely. I promise.
His words were really touching, but... Jacob, I'm sorry. I don't think we can do long distance.
Why not?
'Cause I've applied to College Columbus in Chicago, and I got in. We're gonna be neighbors!